It doesn't matter what you want. What matters is that it motivates you. Once you know what excites you and what motivates you, and think about excitement. Have you ever been excited about something and then noticed that you just kept going, or you got into a flow with something, you just kept going through barriers that normally you would have been tired in? You can go all night working on a project if it's to drive something that you're really excited about. The feelings that you feel when you're excited and fulfilled can also be part of that driving why. Hey everybody, Jeff here. Before we get started, if you're getting value from the podcast, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For those of you listening on podcast apps, don't forget to rate and review. Your support really helps the show reach more people, and for that, I am truly grateful. Now let's dive in.
Welcome to The Point with Jeff Spikes, the show about achieving goals, embracing growth, and finding your true path. And now, here's your host, Jeff Spikes.
Hello and welcome to The Point. This is your host, Jeff Spikes. Welcome to the Change Needs a Why episode, because why drives just about everything you're looking to drive. All right, why is a darn good question. And think about this. Imagine yourself not knowing why you wanted to do something. How motivated do you feel when you don't really know why? On another chasm, how many times have you overdone something? Were you thinking about why then? So knowing why is a regulator. It helps you both regulate what you're doing that you might overdo, and it also helps you be specific. You know, why you're doing something can really help you deliver it in a specific time frame or in a different way, so that it's clear why you're doing what you're doing. It's amazingly helpful in that way. Can you think of an example? Think of video games. If you're a gamer, you know why you're gaming and what you're wanting to accomplish and what you're valuing while you're gaming. It doesn't have a tendency to get out of hand and all of a sudden become a problem in your life. When you really do know why you're doing something, it can help with the motivation. It's part of what nurtures the motivation of what you do want, is why you're doing something. Now, sometimes why you're doing something is because you don't want, and that's okay too. We want both sides of the coin of motivation. You know, looking at my notes, I wrote these series just they just came over me, and that's kind of what happened when these couple of episodes got written. Was I was sitting, and as I read it, I realized, man, this is coming from this really negative look at all the problems in the world and look at all the problems I was facing. They're really coming out of some frustrations, and it was frustrations of things that when I really looked in the mirror and noticed what was happening, I realized were about me, and I was making them about the outside world. So extreme ownership is a value here, and extreme ownership of the results we're getting in the world is one complete way. So one complete way to make sure that you can overcome obstacles quickly. Because if you're focused on what you can control instead of what you can't control, then you're more apt to make changes that sustain and happen quickly. So I'd gone through somewhat of a rant in writing some episodes, and then as I went back and read them, realized that I could do better. So is there anything in your life right now that you're thinking that you did that you're thinking, I maybe could do better? Because just a hint of knowing that is a good enough reason to go back and look at it. Now, it's also the idea that sometimes things are just good enough. They're just a piece of a bigger puzzle, and you just need to get it done. Sometimes finishing something is the higher value. Just like last week, you got to think about how starting something, in the beginning of the year, we start thinking about what are we starting, and sometimes just starting and valuing that we start something is one of the best anchors and motivators that really drives sustained change. But now today, it's you really get to think about this idea that change needs a why. That's how you move a dream or a fantasy into a vision and into something tangible and real that you can move forward with. Knowing that you want to change something, and knowing why can oftentimes also help you take something that feels more lofty and unreachable, also very tangible. So, starts with knowing what you want. It doesn't matter what you want. What matters is that it motivates you. You got to touch on this a little bit last week as we were considering what it is to have a vision and how that works. But now let's pull into it a little differently, because once you know what excites you and what motivates you, and think about excitement, something that when you're tired, when you think of it, you're no longer tired. Have you ever been excited about something and then noticed that you just kept going, or you got into a flow with something, you just kept going through barriers that normally you would have been tired in? You can go all night working on a project if it's to drive something that you're really excited about. But if you're not excited, right, then it's a different story. So excitement can drive a lot. That can be a why. And the feelings that you feel when you're excited and fulfilled can also be part of that driving why. And it's important to think about. So that's how you know if something's really exciting, is if you can not get tired as you're focusing on it and moving through it. What if you're feeling disconnected? I wrote a list here of ideas that keep us disconnected from our why, and ideas that keep us disconnected from knowing what we want. And, let's keep it simple and talk about just a couple of quick things. If you're really feeling disconnected, one of the things that you can do is to start a list. Start a list and make the list about anything you've ever done that you thought was cool. And let's add to that for you. Let's add to that. Let's say anything you've ever done that you thought was cool, fun, fulfilling, exciting, that you want to remember, and something you feel is story worthy, that you'd tell a story about. Maybe it's even something that you went through that at the time wasn't that pleasant, or had a challenge, but you don't mind puffing up and telling people about it. So think about all the stuff you did that you thought was cool, maybe something you've overcome that you thought was cool, and just start listing everything you can think of, right? It might even be something that at one time caused you some trouble, but at that time you thought it was really cool anyway. It was a risk you took, and that it was worth it to you. So thinking in the past in this way doesn't need to be, you don't need the same checks and balances on, is it legal, moral, and ethical? You're just looking for the facts and how you felt about what was happening. So maybe you slam dunked a basketball. Maybe you made something. Maybe you created a piece of art that you're really excited and proud of, that you made that art. Whatever it is, think about everything that you've ever done as cool. What you will start to feel is you'll start to feel that you're being lifted. I kind of move my feet as I talk about that. Like, so you start feeling lifted, like you could start standing on this pile of cool stuff you've done. And what can happen is it can wake up those feelings of excitement and those feelings of wanting and achieving and getting things and making things happen, that will then spark and enliven this new energy in you to start then considering what you really want. Oh, I remember doing all these cool things. It's a natural thing as you get older that a couple things happen as we go through our 20s and get as you're going through your 20s, you get into your 30s, right? As you get into your 30s, you're actually entering the fourth decade of your life, and most of you have ended up somewhere by then. And by ended up, what's that mean, right? Most of you have ended up in patterns that you're repeating over and over, that you've anchored as automations, as basic human automations. You're accustomed to doing them, so that's what you do. You might have even gone to the standpoint now of attaching them to your identity, so you can say, that's who I am. This is what I do, and this is who I am. Well, stopping and challenging those ideas is easier when you're filled up with a feeling of excitement and energy towards all the cool stuff you've done. And in that time zone of life, it's not uncommon for you to end up in some form of a feeling of a rut, or even if it's working for you and you happen to be happy with it. If you're lacking vision, if you want a bigger vision, or you want to take your dreams and fantasies and start really considering whether or not they could be a vision and working them into a vision, and you feel disconnected, you can move into this practice and it can start giving you the new. It opens up different neural pathways than the ruts that you're living in. Again, why would you do this? Well, you would do this if you want a vision. You would do this if you want a bigger vision than what you currently have. And if that vision would then drive change, right? One of the things that we don't do is we tend that it's very simple to make advantage or take advantage many things. We eat what we want. We don't worry about our physical fitness or our condition because there's no real threat anymore. There's not a saber-toothed tiger sitting up on a perch looking down at us with a hunger in their belly. And so we're not concerned about those things, although you may still speak in a way that says that, oh, well, that's how I was made. That's how humans are. So we always have that. Well, here we talk about, making sure you give your unconscious mind a job. Not your unconscious mind, I apologize. Give your critical mind a task, a job, something to look out for, right? Give that a job, and also give your imagination, open your mind to all the possibilities of what could happen around you and really what you would like to see created, what you think you might be able to make possible. And even if you just dream of it being possible, allow some of that space for that, and then go through this process of thinking of all the things that you're done cool. In the middle of that, let me know what spark of energy you feel that creates something new for you. As you do this, you go back in time and you might get towards childhood, and there's a question of why childhood? What's important about childhood that has to do with this? Well, that has to do with change and has to do with having a why and has to do with allowing ourselves what we want and having a vision. Well, most of what you learned and believe about these ideas were things that were imprinted in you as a child when you were being moved further away from your limitless nature when you were born, right? This limitless, watch a toddler, watch a 2-year-old that's about to walk, a 1.5-year-old that's about to walk. Watch them crawl and try and stand and fall. There's a picture on my phone of my grandson crawling across a field, and he's determined to get there. And he has this look of determination on his face. My favorite picture, and I look at that as I look at that in a young child and think, I can do anything. That's that look of I am limitless. Nothing's getting in my way. I am meant to do this next thing. And what challenge is in your life today that was as big as the challenge of that? That's where the specifics come in. Maybe being more intentional with what we eat, and being more intentional with what we consume, what you put in your body, what you listen to, what you speak, what you watch. Maybe that is more important than not. This can really assist and support you in also having that vision. So also allowing yourself the why. So what does childhood have to do with it? Well, that's where you might have the opportunity to unlock things that are more connected to everything else that you've learned since. If we're working together, and when you sign up for these things, we go through a great deal of questions and surveys and things to help really understand more about you. And what you get to find is that you can oftentimes unlink one thing that's connected to so many things that it creates very fast change. So childhood has everything to do with it. Opening those pathways of even thinking back to what was really cool about what you did when you were as early as you can remember, or what you can remember that people told you that you did that was really cool before you remember, can be really powerful. And you might even think, about things like past lives or, generations or other things, not because you believe in those things, because whether or not you believe in those things isn't as relative as to whether or not your unconscious mind, whether or not you have the mental power to store an idea anywhere. Your mind can do anything. It can dream up all kinds of stuff. So if it has the power to do that, sometimes opening it up beyond those ideas and thinking, boy, does any of that really exist? If it only exists in the way that your mind is storing things there, then open your mind up to it and consider it, because it could have the keys to unlocking everything else that you've shut down to try and be appropriate and fit into the educational system and do all the things that you're supposed to do. And it might be working for you. It might be working really well for you. But if you want a vision, you want to have something much bigger to grow towards, then this is how you get there. Now, those of you that work with me already that are paying attention to this one, it's such an honor, and I'm so deeply grateful to be working with you and to have attracted such amazing visionaries into my life. It's working with you that have amazingly large visions that seem unattainable, that some people might say, why are you doing that? I sat across from a couple of coaches that one of them I was helping me work on my speaking skills when I'm doing public speaking, which is so much different than a podcast. And so much different than doing a share when you get up, when you just get up and share your personal story, or it's just different, right? Or do a speech to a group of students or something else. It's just different from doing public speaking. They were asking me about the vision of the company and all the things that we were working towards. And they looked at me, and that was the big question, was, why are you doing all that? I said, I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do, because this is put in me to do. This vision of how to understand how to lift others up is just something that I don't know how not to do. So what is it about you? What is it that's in you? What is it that's part of you that you don't know how not to do? That's oftentimes tied around the actual vision of what you'd like to create. If you give that some thought, I'd love to see some comments and hear back on what you're finding and how that's working for you, particularly in that excitement of considering all the cool stuff you've done over the years. Be careful. I tell people when, if you've spoken to me, you might have heard me say this, that if you don't want to change stuff in your life, you might not want to hang out with me, because sometimes things just change. Sometimes being around me just happens to make things change. And whatever that's about, right? What is it about you that's like that? And you might not want to hang out with me if you don't want to ride a motorcycle, because if you hang out with me long enough, you're going to end up on a motorcycle kind of thing. And tongue in cheek, that's fun, but that's also true about some people that I know. It's the idea of, what is it about you that if someone hangs out with you long enough will probably happen, or they'll probably experience, or they'll probably do. And that could be anything. It could be anything that's specific to you, because you are innately, amazingly, wonderfully created individual with your very own purpose, your very own ways of being, your very own ways of moving towards things. Join us in designing your strengths and learning what those are, so that life can be easy and effortless as you move forward. Get as much as you can get done that's bigger than anything you ever dreamed of. Live your best life. So it's the encouragement for the day. Love to all. See you next time.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of The Point with me, Jeff Spikes. Please visit jeffspikes.com for everything you would need to know to engage with me offline. And lastly, thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration. This is The Point.